So it is officially announced that Giannis has signed the Supermax. 5-year, $228 million. I think the biggest contract in NBA history. And of course, he's a two-time MVP and he deserves it. And it's good to see for this small franchise for a lot of reasons. And we're just going to be talking about the Supermax, what the Bucks I think are going to do. Now, before we get started, subscribe, like, hit the bell, all that stuff that helps the channel out so much. Just do it right now. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, hopefully you do it. And now talking about Giannis, he definitely deserves it. And I personally thought that he was gonna go to free agency because I don't know if this was the complete championship team that he wanted. Now, of course, the Bucks are still gonna have to make some changes, especially Mike Budenholzer is just offense in general. They have shooters, but they just don't perform in the playoffs. Eric Bledsoe is bad. Chris Middleton is okay. Of course, they just built a wall in Giannis, and it's just going to be really interesting. Of course, Giannis is a top, in my opinion, the second best player in the league, and he's just so good. He is the Defensive Player of the Year, the MVP, and I know a lot of people have been hating on Giannis because of his playoff success, especially against the Heat and Raptors, but I still think he can fix it. He can hopefully improve his jump shot. I'm not exactly sure, but he's still Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's so good, and it's just going to be really interesting. So, of course, just talking about the Bucks offseason, they knew they had to make changes. Giannis, at that time, was an expiring deal, and with their franchise player being that, and I've seen people say that, if Giannis leaves, then they might have to relocate. I mean, it's probably not that severe, but that's just how important Giannis Antetokounmpo is. And then they, of course, started off their offseason by trading for Jrue Holiday. Really traded, all of the first-round picks, which I thought was a lot because at the time, like I said, Giannis was inside. So if Giannis left, that would have been off. But now that Giannis is signed, it's probably okay. Now, the one problem is that, so it is a 5-year deal, so I think they don't have their picks in 2026, which is in 5 years. So it's just going to be really interesting. And, of course, Jrue Holiday is a really good player, and he's definitely an upgrade over Eric Bledsoe. But there was still a statistic that in the playoffs, Jrue Holiday has the same three-point percentage as Eric Bledsoe. I'm pretty sure that's true. I'm not exactly sure, but that's just kind of crazy. I mean, of course, Holiday's a better defender, a better ball handler, and just better at everything, basically. Now, he can probably improve his shooting. As we saw in the Portland series, he can clamp up everyone while still being able to put some high-quality numbers. And just going to be really interesting. Now, they, of course, thought they traded Dante DiVincenzo and Ersan Ilyasova for Bogdan Bogdanovic, but because he's a free agent and he wasn't signed yet, and they didn't tell him that, the NBA removed it, mainly because I guess Bogdan didn't want to go to Milwaukee. I guess I'm not exactly sure, but he of course chose Atlanta. But if they had Bogdan, I think that would have been potentially a top. That's a top 3 starting 5. It's crazy just how good this team is. They of course have Jrue Holiday now. He is probably gonna have to run the one. Then you have Dante DiVincenzo, who's still a really good defensive player who can still hit the 3-ball, and he's one of the Bucks' young assets, which is very good, while also being a very uncomfortable situation because you were just traded, but then you weren't traded, and that must be really uncomfortable for Dante DiVincenzo. So I think they should try to ship him because that's really awkward and no team wants that. And then they, of course, have Chris Middleton, an all-star, 20 points a game on really good efficiency. Of course, almost was 50-40-90. He was 0.1% off in his field goal, but that's still really good efficiency. Or his free throw, one of those. And then they, of course, have Giannis. And then Brook Lopez to hold the middle, who can still stretch the floor, and all that good stuff that you just want as a center. And this team is still really good. Now, their depth isn't as good as last year, especially with the loss of George Hill, who they put in the Jrue Holiday trade. They don't have Ersan Ilyasova anymore. They don't have Robin Lopez, but it's still a really good team, especially with Giannis hopefully getting better. Now, I think the main part of Giannis re-signing was his loyalty to the franchise. And of course, Milwaukee took the chance on this young 19-year-old player with so much potential. Now, of course, there are some other teams that are interested, like the Raptors and Masai Ujiri, who wanted to trade up, but they just took a chance. They let him develop. They let him take the chance that they needed. Let him just progress everything he needed, and now look at him. He's an MVP. So that definitely shows loyalty, and I think that's a big reason why he resigned. He is for 5 more years, which is definitely a good sign. And I think they're definitely a championship contender. Now, it's still very uncertain if they'll win the championship. That's still, no one knows yet. But it's just really interesting just how the Bucks do. Of course, when he was, just his story is just so inspirational. He was living in Greece, and he was living in like a one house or one room house with his brothers who are like 7 foot. So that's pretty insane, and just an inspiring story that was led all because of the Bucks franchise letting Giannis go. And he definitely showed loyalty. And now, just talking about my thoughts in general, do I think it's a good deal? Yes, of course. But now people think that they're gonna waste their prime. He's gonna be until 31 years old, which is still a good time. He got his bag, of course, and then if he just fixes his shot and he performs in the playoffs, it's definitely a good deal. Of course, it's a good deal for the Bucks and just Giannis in general. I mean, he could have gone to the Heat. I don't know about that. Heat, Raptors, Mavericks, and probably those fans are probably saying L. But for all of those small market teams, this definitely gives hope for like Oklahoma, OKC, that like you have all those draft picks, and if you draft someone really good, then you can keep him, even though you're a small market, if you just might make the right moves. And I still think it's a really good deal. Now, a lot of people are saying this is like a bad idea for Giannis, and well, there still is pressure on the Bucks to just make a championship team, because Giannis can always request a trade. You can always do that, and I don't think he will, because Giannis isn't that type of guy. But it's just going to be really interesting. Now, of course, the Supermax, he deserved it. And now, of course, they're way in the luxury tax, but it's just going to be really interesting how this season goes. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Bucks' offense and defense, and especially what Mike Budenholzer should do. He, of course, didn't make his minutes, right? He only played Giannis 30 minutes in the playoffs, which is not acceptable. He played Kyle Korver a bit too much. I think he played like DJ Wilson once in the playoffs. That's not acceptable. I know it's only like 1 minute, but still, this is a playoff game, and he definitely needs to fix. He's, of course, a really good regular season coach. He's probably I think he's won 60 games like 3 times, but I don't think he's ever made it past the second round with the Hawks. And of course, he made it to the conference finals with the Bucks, but just never made it to the NBA finals. And that's definitely a problem if Giannis wants to win a championship. Now, he's, of course, going to have to change his scheme, his defensive scheme, especially his offensive scheme, for just their play style. And then also in their defense is to let shooters open, just guard the paint with Giannis and Brook Lopez. And then when you have a team like the Heat, who are knockdown shooters, that's not going to work that much. So he's going to definitely have to adjust. Like Frank Vogel, for example, he adjusted for every team. Against the Heat, he adjusted, especially when putting like changing the matchups, and that's what he needs to do. But it's still going to be really interesting how this Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo with this new extension can do. So yeah, that's going to be the video, and thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment your thoughts about Giannis' extension, and I will see you all next time.